Okay, everybody. So today on Autoimmune Rehab, I would like to welcome Dr. Jeff Gross, and he is a neurosurgeon, and we are going to be talking about interesting things, including things like longevity and stem cells and the immune system and all kinds of good stuff. So, welcome to Autoimmune Rehab, Dr. Jeff. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself? Who are you, and what brings you on to Autoimmune Rehab?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a recovering neurosurgeon, practiced neurosurgery for 27 years. I still do a little, but my main evolution as a physician is that my patients, I did a lot of spine work. My patients were trying to avoid spine surgery, and I wanted to help them do that. And they would bring ideas to me, and one idea was stem cells. Luckily, I have some undergraduate background in that field, and way back then, it wasn't quite ready for prime time. So at one point, I finally put down the regular sick care system Kool-Aid and I went to some stem cell conferences and sort of retrained. And quickly, it became everything I do. So I practice with stem cells, stem cell exosomes, peptides. I practice in anti-inflammatory cell signaling at the highest level.
Well, that's cool. That's interesting. Yeah, and you're actually not the first, shall we say, I guess, former neurosurgeon or whatever you want to call it, that has gotten into some different kind of a medicine, have kind of decided to pivot and not do the surgery anymore, not do it as much, just because there is so much other technology out there that you can use that can help avoid the surgery. And let's face it, surgery is not a fun experience, and anybody who's been through it, whether it's back, knees, or whatever will tell you that that's not really something that you want to do unless you absolutely have to. So,
Agreed.
so tell us a little bit about, let's maybe start by talking about a little bit about some of the basics, because I know that you and I both know what stem cells are, but tell us your definition of what stem cells are for people that are kind of maybe a little bit muddy and don't really know exactly what they are.
Well, stem cells refer to a bank of regenerative cells that our body maintains that we learned about in the baby making process. So when you are a fertilized egg, you are this very, very powerful stem cell, and you will create a human. And that all your cells stem from that one cell. Get it? Stem cells. So you form into a fetus. Your cells are powerful, but the cells then can't form an entire human, but they can form a liver, or they can form an arm, maybe a limb. And then when you're born, you necessarily have the ability in those cells to make a new limb or anything, but you do have the ability to replace cells and regenerate and heal and repair. And we maintain that during our lives. We lose some steam in our ability to use our stem cells as they help us, maintain ourselves. But the entire basis of regenerative medicine is to use that information and tap back into it to help repair something in the body or to encourage certain cellular behaviors in the body that on their own weren't able to repair the problem.
Okay, for sure. That's a good definition. I like that definition. So tell us a little bit. Obviously, like you used to do surgery a lot more frequently, basically full time. I'm assuming you didn't just all of a sudden go from full stop on surgery to doing what you are doing today with the longevity and the stem cells. So tell us a little bit about how did that actually get started, or how did you get going with that, I guess. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think I was ripe to make a transition. I was never very surgical as a surgeon. My job, well, I used to say this. There's no one that knows better than the surgeon how to help someone avoid surgery. So less than 5% of my patients ever had surgery. We went back and did an analysis once. So I wasn't very surgical to begin with. So it was easy to sort of, jump from there, if you will, into a full non-surgical practice. Now I still do procedures. I do injections, usually with some type of stem cell or exosome into a joint or the spine to help someone avoid a surgery who's got an inflammatory damage, degeneration, cartilage loss that doctors sometimes dummy down to the word arthritis. But it's really more of a process than just the word arthritis.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that because I know I definitely have some listeners that have, like even the rheumatoid arthritis, like the autoimmune form of arthritis. So you're saying that's kind of sort of a dummy diagnosis. Explain a little more about what you mean by that.
Well, I think people go to see their doctor and they say, I have knee pain, and they do an X-ray, which doesn't show all the structures, just shows the bone. And oh, you've got some loss of the cartilage. They call that bone on bone. It's arthritis. But that has very little that does to educate or explain the exact process by which that joint is wearing down. So whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, which is really an accelerated autoimmune form of the problem, or wear and tear osteoarthritis, what we're looking at is an impaired and overinflamed set of cells at the edges of the bone called chondrocytes. And chondrocytes were part of that growth plate that created that cartilage in the first place, and during your life maintained the cartilage. Well, once those chondrocytes are cranky, they can no longer produce cartilage protein. They can no longer lubricate the protein. They can no longer maintain it. And the cartilage therefore rubs away, and then the bones do touch. But the cartilage doesn't make itself, the bone cells make it. And when they get cranky, that's the accumulated degenerative inflammatory metabolic damage of those cells that some doctors simply call arthritis.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that explanation. So what would be your way, if you will, or your approach with somebody that comes in and has arthritis or, has this going on? What would you typically do for somebody?
Well, we, evaluate them. We do some labs, we do some MRIs, and we look at the actual cartilage and the bone edge. And if you order the MRIs properly, you can actually see the inflammatory stress in those cells. So we want to set the foundation. We help people with an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, diet, sleep, exercise, stress, supplements, exercises that they can manage. All of these things to support an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Then we offer them a regenerative injection. It's usually a one and done procedure to help re-stimulate the cartilage factory. So that injection is done targeted off of those MRIs, and they do better if the patient is fully invested in that anti-inflammatory lifestyle and an anabolic process, growing and developing muscles and bone, and continuing to grow. Because if you don't continue to grow, then you shrivel up and you start to waste away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that from personal experience. I've actually done stem cell injections. I actually went to Mexico and did the umbilical stem cell injections. And that still doesn't mean that, you can just eat whatever you want, live whatever kind of a terrible lifestyle. You still have to
Right.
doesn't mean you can load up on all the junk and sugar all the time and never exercise. You still have to take care of yourself. So.
Right, right, right. The stem cells will not just be the fix it, although they are a big, powerful step.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more. What do you feel like people should know about stem cell treatment that they
Oh,
maybe don't know already?
well, first, stem cells can come from your own body or from a younger donated source. The younger donated source is more powerful, especially if you have autoimmune. Your body's inflamed, therefore your stem cells are inflamed. So you really want something fresh out of the gate. And when you take your car to get the oil changed, you don't ask them to put the old oil back in, right? You want the fresh, unadulterated oil. So that's what we're talking about here. And here in the States, this is a regulated process. It's ethical and moral, and it's through mothers who have a healthy baby can donate at the time of a C-section. They can donate amniotic fluid, umbilical cord, placenta through the American Tissue Bank services, again, regulated and certified services. These biological tissues then go into a lab. The labs are FDA registered. They test the materials. I particularly use a lab that has material from non-COVID vaccinated mothers because we don't want to deal with the inflammatory burden from the spike protein. And
Hmm.
uh, and this is a regulated, trusted process. So you went to Mexico because the Central American, Mexican, Asian, Europeans, they can advertise all kinds of claims about what stem cells can do. We here in the States are not yet approved for marketing claims. So we have to be very conservative about how we approach this option for treatment. But it is available here in the States. There's nothing unethical about the sources. These are not embryonic, they are perinatal around the time of birth. And the the other thing people should know about stem cells is they don't do the work, they deliver the work. So stem cells in your body deliver cell signaling through small proteins called peptides and small vesicles. Now we say small, and you're going to say, well, Jeff, cells are already small. And you're right, but their vesicles that outbubble off the cell, which we call exosomes, are even smaller by 1,000 times. And those are how a stem cell influences our own cells, and our own cells actually do the healing. They are encouraged to flip from a defense mode, which is an inflame mode, to a peacetime mode, which is an anti-inflame mode. So that anti-inflammatory mode allows the cells to do optimally what they're supposed to do. For example, make cartilage. So people with hyperinflamed states, autoimmune, other types of issues involving inflammation, and most diseases have an inflammatory element, uh, might benefit from what that exosome and peptides can signal those cells into flipping into an anti-inflammatory status.
Okay, awesome. That's great. So now let's talk a little bit about, let's say somebody doesn't necessarily have arthritis. Maybe they don't have chronic pain somewhere. Like for me, it was the knees. So that was what, fueled my doing stem cells was chronic knee pain. But let's say somebody doesn't really have chronic pain necessarily, but they have some kind of an autoimmune condition, so they can benefit from stem cells. How would the approach for them doing stem cells be different from, say, somebody that has, an actual chronic pain in the back or knees or, arthritis or something like that?
Well, we would do something through intravenous delivery, meaning IV, and we would probably go with an exosome instead of a stem cell for a couple reasons. One, exosomes are more affordable than stem cells while doing the same thing. But two, if you get stem cells, cells are sticky. They go in your vein up to your heart first, and your heart takes a big chunk of them. Then your heart pumps blood to the lungs to get oxygenated. It takes a big chunk of them. Then it goes back to the heart and it takes a big chunk again. So by the time it's pumping out to the body does not get a great distribution of stem cells. Now that's great for the heart and lungs, but it's just not great for the body. Exosomes are different. They're so much part of the fluid of the plasma of the blood that they travel without getting stuck. They have fewer receptors. They're less sticky. They're much smaller, as I mentioned earlier, so they cross the blood-brain barrier, can get into the brain and slow neuroinflammation. So exosomes from stem cells are really, I think, the game changer for the delivery of an anti-inflammatory cell signaling approach.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. That's interesting. I mean, I know something about that, have some experience with my orthopedic doctor who actually does those, and he goes to Mexico and does the Mexico one. So he does those here in the States, and then he does a variety of different ones. So I'm somewhat familiar with those, but I haven't actually tried that kind yet anyway. Haven't really found a reason to, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that definitely need it. So let's see, what else was I going to ask you about? So I know we have on your bio here that you also work with, like plant-derived exosomes.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what those are and how are those different from, stem cells?
Thank you. Yeah, I stumbled onto that actually. I was reading some research papers on exosomes, which I do weekly, keep up on the literature, and I stumbled on some papers on plant-derived exosomes. I did not realize that plant stem cells make exosomes, and I read further and found an entire cache of research in this field. And the research shows that fruits and vegetables and other species like mushrooms and other things make exosomes. In plants, that's how phytonutrients are delivered. They're produced in the exosome. So I found it quite ironic, maybe not ironic, but like inefficient that the entire nutraceutical industry takes either synthesizes a phytonutrient, and phytonutrient might be resveratrol, quercetin, fisetin, anthocyanins, all kinds of things that fruits and vegetables make that our cells need to improve the processes of those cells. And these have been used for centuries, if not millennia, to fight cancer and suppress inflammation, right? We know fruits and vegetables are healthy. we didn't know, well, until I read the research, I didn't know that plants deliver that by exosomes. So nutraceuticals are just the molecule, not the exosome. And if you were to take fruit to make to make a nutraceutical, you break open the exosomes. So the sad part there is when you eat the nutraceutical, you lose quite a bit in the digestion process because they're not encapsulated by the exosome to protect them. And then you get some into the bloodstream, and whatever gets into the bloodstream bounces around, and very little gets into the cell because the cells aren't designed to take in the naked phytonutrient. They're looking for the exosome. So you get very little intracellular delivery of these supplements, where you need them most. They don't do anything in the bloodstream. So you get expensive pee, right?
Yeah.
Well, so so I discovered that if you eat the fruits and vegetables, you're getting the natural exosomal source. It's encapsulated and it delivers much better to our cells, 4,500 times more efficiently than a naked molecule. So the problem here was it was very difficult to concentrate the exosomes, and you'd have to eat an awful lot of fruit to get a high dose. And of course,
Mhm.
fruit has lots of sugar, fructose sugar, and it's a lot of food you'd have to eat. So we found a lab that could extract the exosomes, and that is labor intensive. They have to be ultracentrifuged multiple times significantly. And then those exosomes now we have into a daily capsule. So it's plant derived in a vegetable capsule. It's an incredible phytonutrient. The preclinical studies show improvement in cellular longevity in all the markers. And it is something you might take for longevity. We call it Longevex for longevity exosomes.
Okay, and how does that impact somebody that has like an autoimmune? If somebody's here listening to this, what would be the real benefits of somebody taking something like that?
Well, one of the strategies of combating inflammation is through healthy diet, and that
Mhm.
includes organic fruits and vegetables to help suppress the inflammation. So, Longevix would be a very highly concentrated way to get phytonutrients that help cellular health by suppressing inflammatory pathways.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So basically, I mean, it's both a supplement, but at the same time, it's not like your traditional supplement, basically. It people might view it as such because it's a pill that you're taking, but it's not the same as like just your run-of-the-mill supplements that you find at the store per se.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm more of the science nerd on this, but I mean, it's pretty amazing to get a 4,500 times delivery of the phytonutrients that we have in this capsule. I mean, you can get rid of a handful of other supplements, and you'd never be able to eat enough fruit to get this kind of delivery. So, if you're already eating fruits and vegetables as part of your anti-inflammatory lifestyle to combat an autoimmune process, well, then Longevix really up your game in that category.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we've got some information on that. So I know we've got a couple of your websites that we can link to. We've got recelebrate.com, which is like the main one where you talk about your stem cells and all that kind of thing. I think is that where you talk about the plant-derived exosomes on there too, or not?
There's some information there on the science behind it, but the actual site, if you're interested in the product, is RecellNutra, RecellNutra.com.
Okay, awesome. We'll link to that so people can go there and check it out. And what do you feel like your current focus is then as far as research and helping people? Are you focused more on that side of things? Are you focused more on the stem cells? What's just kind of a little of both?
I do a good third or 40% of my practice is joint and spine procedures, as we were talking about,
Mhm.
injecting, the human exosomes. Another third of my practice is inflammation and longevity, which might be intravenous use. It might be plant-derived oral capsules, like we talked about. It might be peptides. And then the last third or whatever was remaining is a hodgepodge of many different things where we look at different options. It might be dealing with a particular problem. It might be someone who's seeking to take proactive, preemptive, longevity steps. People come in for body compositional changes. They want to lose some weight/fat and gain some muscle. And we talk about cellular physiology and how to get there and what they need to do, and all the different tools we have at our fingertips help us get there.
Okay, cool. So who typically are your patients? Are they typically people that are in your local area that have just heard about you, or do you find you have people that travel and come to visit you? And
No, no, no. Very few. I'm here in Las Vegas, Henderson, Nevada, which is a suburb of Las Vegas. Very few of my patients are local. Most of what we do starts out remote by video telehealth, like you and I are doing right here today. And we help order the labs. We might order MRIs. We advise people repetitively, and we only invite them to Las Vegas if there's something that they're ready for and that we can do for them here. And so people might fly in for a day or two and see us, and or stay and see a show. It's Vegas, right? And then go home.
okay, cool. So you work with quite a few people, either long distance or maybe you have them come there, especially I would imagine you work with a lot of people. Some people maybe even have had surgery already and didn't get the results they were looking for, or,
Yep.
they're just frustrated by the lack of results and
Yep.
haven't been able to see the kinds of
Yep.
things that they've been looking for.
All kinds of things, a lot of second opinions. Now, of course, if they've had a joint replacement, it's too late. They've burned that bridge. So we might do some things to help them. If they have residual pain, we sometimes find problems with the implants, but, and they have to refer them back to their orthopedic doctor for that.
Yeah, but basically it's for people that are saying, okay, I may be being told I need a knee replacement or I need to do a spine surgery or
Yes.
something, but I don't really want to do that. So I'm seeking out a different opinion before I
Yes.
proceed with that to find some other kind of a solution.
Yes, we would be an ideal second opinion for people in that category.
Okay, awesome, cool. Okay, so we will make sure your websites and everything are linked below. Anything else that I didn't ask you about that I should have that you feel like people should know?
Well, I think that the explosion of the interest in peptides, therapeutic peptides, is growing. We're doing more and more peptides. We stack peptides sometimes with the exosome procedures. We have found peptides to be more of an entry level consideration before we go to bigger regenerative cell signaling. And all these fall under the heading of cell signaling. We're trying to signal to the cells to suppress the inflammation, get back to work, do what they're supposed to do.
That's good. That's awesome. That's interesting. And I know, when people think of peptides these days, a lot of times people think of the GLP-1s because those are a peptide, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about peptides for helping to heal the cells, which
Well,
is a little different.
I'm also talking about GLPs. It is a peptide,
Okay.
and there are anti-inflammatory characteristics. I personally take a low dose GLP for that purpose.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. So people can use that for not just for weight loss, it's also for
Right.
okay. Interesting.
Correct.
So if somebody's looking to consult on peptides, you would be a good person to come to as well then.
I would probably be one of the guys to do that. Yes.
Okay, awesome, cool. Okay, anything else then that we didn't talk about that you think we should bring up?
Just for those of you out there with an issue and struggling to get it dealt with, just keep getting new opinions. Take no for an answer. You got to help find a solution, and so we can reverse that inflammatory damage.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people is you don't want to take no for an answer or believe you can be cured because a lot of doctors tell people they can't be, and that's just not true. And you're proof of that. You're offering some very revolutionary things that I think sometimes people don't think about.
We're here to make those available to people. That falls under the Hippocratic Oath that we give them options, and we try to help them.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Dr. Joe.
Thank you so much for having me.